right now you probably have a pile of unaddressed problems, and you probably don't understand why you don't address your problems. You probably think to yourself, like, something is wrong with me. Like, I've been procrastinating all these problems, and I'm basically running my own life, and I don't know how to address this. The simple answer to that, one of the most effective ways to actually solve that problem, is with a dopamine detox. But before we get into that, I want to break down why we have such a hard time facing our problems. So, before our generation, before social media and the internet and smartphones, when you had a problem that you needed to address, there was no other way to relieve that problem other than addressing it. If you had to have a conversation with your girl, the only way to relieve that stress was to go and talk to your girl. If you had a task that you needed to get done, the only way to relieve the stress of not getting that task done was by doing the task. And so this created a very healthy relationship between us and our brain. Our brain told us this problem needs attention. We felt the stress and addressed the problem. Stress was relieved. However, now with the internet, social media, smartphones, and all the distractions that are available to us, whenever you have a problem, you don't necessarily need to address it to relieve the stress. And so this creates a very confusing relationship between us and our minds. So we would have, for example, a college assignment that's due, and instead of going to deal with the college assignments, we find that it's much easier to just play video games for 4 or 5 hours with our friends. If we gotta have a conversation with a girl, we find that it's much easier to just scroll on social media for 4 or 5 hours straight instead of addressing the problem. And so over time, you start piling on problems after problems after problems that are unaddressed, and you find that you need more and more dopamine to deal with the stress that these problems are causing. So this is where a dopamine detox comes in. So your relationship between your brain is warped right now because you trained your mind to look for the quickest dopamine hit it can find whenever a problem arises. The best way to fix that is simply by cutting off all the possible ways that your brain can distract itself. If you have a problem and you feel like binge watching social media, you're gonna do that. But if social media is not an option, your brain won't go to social media to try and soothe the stress. If you have a problem and you have the option to play video games, your brain is always going to play video games instead of address this problem. But if that's not an option, your brain will have no choice but to face the problem. And it becomes very uncomfortable at first, because it's very easy to not fix the problems. I mean, that's why you have the problem, because it's so much easier to just find the quickest hit of dopamine. And that's basically the reason why dopamine detox is so effective, because it gives your brain no option to fix the stress other than by fixing and addressing the problems that are causing the stress. If you can develop the discipline that's required for a dopamine detox, the kind of man you become is basically the one who fixes his financial problems, fixes his academic problems, fixes his relationship problems, because you have no choice but to fix your problems if you ever want to feel stress-free. So, if your biggest problem right now is avoiding problems, if you want to become the kind of person who addresses his problems and basically fixes his life. If you want to have a proper life that's meaningful to you, the best way to do that is to allow your brain no distractions. You're gonna stick out like a sore thumb if you can do that, because everybody around you is doing it. All of your competition is doing it. All of your friends are doing it. Your mom, your dad, everybody is distracting themselves because it has become so much more convenient and so much more easier to just distract yourself rather than deal with your problems. And so for anybody out there who's interested in not only fixing their problems, but elevating to heights of success that they never thought were possible, you need to develop the ability to sit with your stress. You need to develop the ability to face your problems without running to some drug or some party or some video game or some social media. If you can develop the ability to sit there and look your problems in the face